We've had a lot of excitements this week. From technical things, from workloads. I was a bachelor for the week. That in itself is exciting. And I'm trying to figure out how to turn on Chad's phone because he gave it to me upside down. Hold on, please. More technical challenges for me. There we go. And as we go through all the challenges that are ongoing, every so often we just have to stop and breathe and realize that most of the things that are making us excited are fairly irrelevant. I use the term "I don't care" a lot, and it's not that I don't care, but in the big scheme of things, it's not a big deal. When things go bad, when things go wrong, minor things like a bulletin not showing up, hey, look at that. We're 15 minutes into the service, but you're 90% done with all the things that you have to read. So we made it, we survived. There's just so many things that we can control and so many things that we can accomplish. So we're going to do a number of things. One thing is that last week we announced that we had bought these books. They're called Dream Church. And GREAM is an acronym that he put together. And I told you up front that I love this guy and I love this book because every page I anticipated what the next page was going to talk about, and I was right like 98% of the time. This guy is my long lost brother. We think alike, we do the same stupid jokes. It's a really good book. But what I need is I need a minimum of 2 volunteers that are willing, A, to read the whole book, and it's not that small a font, so it's definitely doable, to read the book, but to critique and to give me feedback on, hey, this is a McKendree thing, or this should be a McKendree thing, or yeah, do this thing and I'm out of here. I mean, I'll take the bad news and the good news in the book, but I need at least 2 volunteers. If I get more than 2 volunteers, I'll donate my copy to a person, and if we get more than 3, I'll go out and personally buy more copies of the books. So at the end of the service, which goes into the next thing, is that today is the first week of Coffee with the Pastor. In the back, there's a Keurig with coffee cups, coffee Keurig pods. And everybody I talked to so far in this church that I've had any social interface with are tea drinkers. So I got K-cups for tea also. Alienated my granddaughter because I didn't get green tea, I only got black tea. Next week will improve. Maybe I can talk her to come back again. So during that time, you can talk to me about whether or not you're going to sign up and do the book. I also need to get feedback on a Lenten Bible service. I need to know what night of the week to do it. It's going to be a 5-week Bible study. It's going to be interactive. There will be something up on the screen that we'll listen to from anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the particular week, and then we'll delve into the subject of that week. It's a preparatory, it's called Easter, but it's a preparatory thing for the Easter event, the excitement that Don was talking about, but it's the 4 weeks of we'll call it plotting, but I find it very uplifting, but the 4 weeks you have to get there in order to enjoy Easter. So I need volunteers to read the book. I need suggestions on what night of the week we do our Lenten Bible study. We're also going to start up, and I'm going to say in 3 weeks, but don't quote me on that. We're going to do we're not calling it a grief sharing, but we're going to do something about grief recovery. And we've got the word happiness in the title, although I just can't remember the title, so I can't tell you what it is. We're going to do that. We think that's going to be on a Tuesday evening. We're going to do short sessions. We're going to do 4 sessions in a year because 52 weeks of talking about grief, I don't think anybody should do that. So I'm going to have like 4 or 6 week sessions with a break, and that'll also get us into things like special seasons where it's tougher than any other particular day of the week. So that will be another thing I need some feedback. Are you interested in that type of an event? And does Tuesday work? I had a 4th thing, and I forget because my brain works that way. So I'm going to start off, if my handy Vanna would flip up the next slide. I've got some things for in the news. The number one point, that UPS last week cut 12,000 jobs. Just put that number, 12,000, into your head. And the second one was PayPal, another large company, laid off 2,000 people. Remember that number. We're going to come around to that during the message. The third one I just put in there because I just can't believe the number. Elon Musk got his pay cut by $56 billion. He got a $56 billion pay cut, and he still ranks as the 4th richest man in the world. Just trying to, I can, but just try and embrace that number. To be cut $56 billion and still rank in the top 10, top 5 for him. That is a lot of money. There are more zeros than I can count. Oh, I have a timeout.
Question? What happens to the $568 billion?
56 billion?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's the bad news. Because at the end of the week there was an announcement made. Is if there are certain things happen, he can get the 56 back. So between you and me, absolutely nothing. Okay. So I won't be getting any of it, and you won't be getting any of it. And if you own a Tesla, I don't remember, I think the number is 20,000 Teslas were just recalled, so you don't even get to keep your car. So that's how bad the whole situation is. And the other thing I've got on that slide is the fact that I read this quote from Jackie Robinson, and it said that life is not a spectator sport. And that one I do want you to get set into your mind, because we need, as Christians, to be busy people. Now, I'm going to qualify that. I don't want us to be busy for the sake of being busy. I want us to be busy by doing something that we feel will build us up and in turn build up the kingdom of God. So, do not be a spectator, be a participant. And in Jackie Robinson, it was tougher for him because he had to be a participant in a sport that he wasn't necessarily welcome to. My comment is that you are all welcome to be a participant in the game of God. So let's move on to Matthew 14, and we're going to go through verses 13 through 14. And I'm just going to warn Adam is that my notes are different than what's coming up on the screen because I realize I'm missing stuff. So I'll be looking quite often to make sure that I'm on the right screen. So in Matthew 14, 13 through 14, it goes like this. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Put that picture in your head. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Point number 1 on this slide. And you can flip to the next slide if you can. Point number 1, retiring to seclusion. There's a lot of things about that point, but number 1 is that Jesus needed to get away. And for this particular message, I'm going to say he had to get away for 2 reasons. He had to get away to rest and pray, but he also had to get away in order to regain some energy. And it drove me to the question, was Jesus an introvert or an extrovert? And a lot of people have the definition a little messed up. My definition of an introvert is someone, when they are with people, they get tired. People make them tired. They take the energy out of them. If you're an extrovert and you're with people, people give them energy. I'm an extrovert. When I'm with people, people give me energy. So I feel better after spending time with people than before. So just put that picture in your head. What was Jesus? Jesus had no problem mingling with people. So if you go with that definition of introvert and extrovert doesn't want to be, wants to be with people, introvert doesn't. which isn't necessarily true, but Jesus wanted to be with the people. So did he really need to gain energy? The next part of that verse kind of said no. He wants to get away in order to spend time with God. He wants to learn. He wants to understand. He wants to be refreshed in his head about what's going on. But the key is that he retired to seclusion. It keeps going, and it says that the crowds followed him on foot from the towns, mainly because they didn't have a bus system back then, but that's okay, we'll ignore that. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed the sick. So going back to that question is, did he need to regain energy? Was he an introvert? The answer probably is no, because he said, I'm going there for seclusion. But he turned around and said, okay, well, you're all here, let's get into it. And he started healing the sick and preaching. He went right to work. He was not a spectator. But as we go through, we're getting into the story of where we really want to be in Matthew 14, 15 through 16, yay. And as evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food. Jesus replied, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. So we hear that a lot in the church, is that especially a pastor and anybody in leadership, someone will come up and say, you know what? We need to do fill in the blank. And my response is normally, we? Who has the urge, the feeling, the sensation that something needs to be done? Not me, but you. So most of the time, and I'll qualify most of the time, when there's an idea, and most of the time they're great ideas, it said, don't wait for other people to do the idea that you have in your head. Now, you might not be qualified to lead. You might not be qualified to build it up. But you can at least get the ball rolling. Maybe you're qualified to understand what needs to be done, and your job is to recruit someone to take the bull by the horns and get it started. But there's a participatory role for you in that idea. And Jesus is going to the disciples and saying, don't look at me. You guys think they're hungry. You guys think they need to eat. You guys figure out a way to feed them. Look at what I have done in the past. You should at least be able to do that much. And the disciples, of course, and I always picture myself as a disciple in every one of the stories, going, gee, dude, last week's message, Gary preached that don't bring anything with you. So I got no cash. I got no food. How am I supposed to feed him? And Jesus looks at Gary and said, you haven't learned much, have you? And I agree. I probably haven't learned much. So he continues. I hope he continues. Does he continue? Yes, he does. Good, because this is what I didn't have. So after this little discussion of Jesus looking at the disciples are looking at Jesus, the Jesus is looking at the disciples back to the disciples saying, we have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Bring them here to me, Jesus said. And there's my triple dots mean that I left something out because I couldn't get it on the screen. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Here's point 2. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up the 12 baskets of broken pieces that were left over. That's point 3. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. There's point 4. So we went through, we got 4 points. First is, they've been, you can go to the next slide, that they've been out wandering, and they've now come to a place where they can sit and regroup, and Jesus and the crowds both take advantage of the situation.